How well do you actually listen? Well, you might be thinking, most of the time I hear what people have to say, but perhaps you're just participating in the act of hearing, not listening. Listening in itself is a huge part of communication, and communication is a skill. It must be actively polished and refined. Speaking is so ingrained in our everyday life, so normalized that we do it without thinking, and the habits of our speech have stipened over time. All the words we use, the accents we speak, the way we go about delivering these lines, these are all things that we may fail to consciously think about, especially in an age where communication is seemingly done through a screen instead of face-to-face. Speaking and listening, we're not all good at it. Many of us can be better, and it honestly make leaps of changes in every aspect of our life if we learn how to effectively listen and deliver. But then you might be wondering, how hard could it really be? All I need to do is sit there, nod my head, make sure I just listen to what they say, right? Well, in this video, I'll share exactly how you can learn to listen better and boost your communication skills. But before I do so, make sure to subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and let me continue to help you mind the goal in mind. So while it may seem quite straightforward and simple, great listening involves so much more than just sitting still and nodding your head. Oftentimes, when people believe they are listening, they're actually merely hearing, letting the words flow through their ears, but never really embracing the substance of what is heard with their heart and mind. As they always say, it goes in one ear and out the other, right? This doesn't affect me, and only the younger generation don't properly listen, and this might be something you might be thinking. Well, some of us may think we're exempt from this fact since we grew up in a time where people communicated more frequently, but as I mentioned earlier, just because we're sitting there and hearing out the words said, it doesn't necessarily mean you're truly listening. In one study by Harvard Business Review to gauge people's listening ability, a group of several thousand people, students and business professionals alike, were examined. For each person, they tested how well they listened and remembered content spoken in short talks. The results? Interestingly, after 2 months of listening to the talk, the average person only remembered about 25% of the things that were said. Additionally, a Florida State University and Michigan State University study further discovered that within 8 hours, roughly 1/3 of what was heard was forgotten. So, as you can see, people actually don't listen as effectively as they think they do. And then, of course, there's no surprise that women and men communicate differently as well. Miscommunication or a lack of it is oftentimes one of the biggest clashes between men or women or relationships as a whole. Generally speaking, the typical scenario is drawn up like so. The woman goes on talking about how her man doesn't listen to him well enough, and the man says how his woman talks way too much. She goes one way while he goes the other. Both parties end up frustrated, dropping whatever issue and trying to move on. But the root of the problem has not been fixed, which only means this scenario will repeat again. Regardless of if it's a man or a woman, or a man to a man, or a woman to a woman, feelings are hurt along the way when you have miscommunication. Just looking at gender differences, a study by Indiana University School of Medicine demonstrated that men, after listening to a passage from a famous novel, showed strong activity in the temporal lobe of the left side of the brain. This area is involved with language comprehension, sensory input, and the retention of visual memory. The majority of the women, however, while showing strong activity in the left, also lit up on the right temporal lobe as well. The area primarily involved with verbal memory and the processing of non-verbal information. Furthermore, when it comes to the way men and women think, there are just biological differences between our genders that we can't ignore, no matter how much we try to believe we're all the same. Researchers at University of California, Irvine, and the University of New Mexico discovered that men's brains contain over 6 times more gray matter in relation to intelligence compared to their counterparts, while women had 10 times the amount of white matter. So to give you a bit of perspective, in human brains, gray matter represents information processing centers, whereas white matter works to network these processing. So these findings demonstrate just how far and different men and women's intellectual behavior are on a neurological level, even when it comes to communication. And this gives further explanation to why the two sexes perform stronger in various tasks, where men show strengths in mathematics through greater localized processing, and women assimilate information better, which supports language. Another study that continues to support that women have a greater grasp in language-focused areas was done by Cambridge University, where a team of researchers found that the women had more pronounced Heschl's gyri, formerly known as transverse temporal gyri, a structure that governs acoustic processing or listening. Now, none of these studies directly imply that women are absolutely better at women in communication. However, it does demonstrate how females have a larger capacity to express and verbalize their feelings better. So while this may not excuse those who seem distant when listening, these truths could hopefully help to understand the underlying reasons why your partner may not be the best listener, if that person is a man. But besides these biological differences, simply shrugging our shoulders and saying, oh, well, that's just how I am, or that's just the gender I am, is a lazy way out. Listening is still a skill. And like any skill, attentive, active listening can be learned. When we are word vomiting the thoughts that are mustering up in our brain, sometimes all we want is someone to sit there and soak it all in. And that's what listening is for. And yet all of us have an opinion these days, in need of expression. Instead of focusing on listening, we try to fix things, and that's the problem. And so if we're just listening to try to fix things, we make it less about the person who's actually speaking and more about ourselves. Sure, there's no doubt that the intent to inform or advise is all in good spirits. Consideration and care are all well appreciated. Yet, this is what separates the simple listeners from the great ones. Truly amazing listeners sit back and become a sponge, soaking in the words, the feelings, and everything that comes with the expression in itself. They pay attention to the subtle nuances the person that is speaking shows them. As Stephen R. Covey states, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Listening is not about knowing what to say next or staring off in silence as we give that person room to say whatever. What makes someone a great listener is active empathy and attention. As the saying goes, the beauty of listening is that those who are listened to start feeling accepted, start taking their words more seriously, and discovering their true selves. Listening is a form of spiritual hospitality by which you invite strangers to become friends. So with all of this information, how can you go about becoming a more active, empathetic listener? Well, one interesting model to consider, and has been quite popular with business leaders for some time, has been called the active, empathetic listening model. Originally developed by Drollinger and Company as for salespeople to use to increase their businesses, this is where customary active listening is merged with empathy to realize a higher form of listening. Later on, researcher Bodhi later added onto this model to be a more applicable for social contexts. So the active empathetic listening model breaks down the art of listening into 11 evaluative items that are categorized into 3 central areas of effective listening: sensing, processing, and responding. When it comes to sensing, ask yourself, are you sensitive to what others are not saying? Are you aware of what others imply but do not say? Do you understand how others feel? Do you listen for more than just spoken words? When it comes to processing, you must ask yourself, do you assure others that you'll remember what they say? Do you summarize points of agreement and disagreement when appropriate? Do you keep track of the points others make? And then when it comes to responding, do you assure others that you're listening by using verbal acknowledgements? Do you assure others that you're receptive to their ideas? Do you ask questions that show that you're understanding their position? And do you show others that you're listening with your body language, such as head nods? Reflecting and reminding yourself of these 11 points can help you focus on what's important when it comes to active listening with empathy. While this is no magic formula, improving yourself in all of these 3 areas can definitely be a start to refining the listener within. Beyond the AEL model, one of the more prominent psychologists that come to mind when it comes to the art of listening is Erich Fromm, a German-born philosopher known for his great works in the psychoanalysis of culture and self. In his journey to better understand the people we love, he outlined that we should practice 6 guidelines that can help us to become an unselfish listener and in turn master the art of listening. These points are: number 1, concentrate on the listener completely. Number 2, free the mind from greed and anxiety. Number 3, possess an imagination that is free to express itself in words. Number 4, empathize with all your heart. Experience the listener's emotions as if it were your own. Number 5, be truly empathetic. Let go of the fear of oneself. This can help you learn to love others more. And number 6, know that understanding and loving are one and the same. They are inseparable. So in his book, The Art of Listening, Fromm gives deeper insight into the connection between deep and genuine listening and the expression of utter love. So many of us think that loving someone means that we need to provide them with an extending hand, word of advice, or 2 cents of the matter to solve their problem. The truth is, doing so makes us fail to realize that these people that are reaching out to us are ultimately hoping to be heard, not to be told on what to do or how to do things. You need to learn to quiet your voice within, mitigating any judgment in all its forms. You need to appreciate the moment between you and the other person. You need to lean into the words and nonverbal cues of your expression, and by doing so, you begin to truly feel what the other person hopes to share. And by doing all this with continued practice with the people you love, can hopefully help you learn to truly listen better. As the popular phrase goes, we have 2 ears and 1 tongue so that we can listen more and talk less. And I think this is something that all of us, especially in a day and age where opinions are rife, should all take to heart. Now, listening isn't just a great tool for communication, it's also great when it comes to apologizing to somebody effectively as well. So, if you want to learn more about how to construct a powerful apology that works, make sure to check out the next video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to be fed more nuggets of gold like this on communication that help boost brain and behavior.